Peace. You are tuned into Edible Activists with your host and favorite edible activist, Melissa L. Jones. On this show, we honor Black people and their stories in food and agriculture, celebrating legacy, traditions, contributions, and creativity that all stem from the land. So tune in and let's get started. Peace. I am your host and favorite edible activist, Melissa L. Jones. Today's guest is an award-winning publisher and journalist who has been unapologetically centering Black food culture, history, and the African diaspora for over 15 years. Sheree Williams is the publisher of Cuisine Noir, the first media outlet in the United States to pioneer Black food media, connecting the African diaspora through food, drink, and travel since 2009. Sheree, welcome to Edible Activists.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, this is such a pleasure. I had the honor to share stage with the Sheree of Cuisine Noir and two other amazing women, Anella Malik and also Clancy Cooks at the Black Women in Food Conference. A couple months ago or back in
Yes,
my
April.
time?
I
April,
know,
my goodness.
right?
And it was the deepest pleasure. And I walked away with so many contacts and so many meaningful connections. And
Yeah.
I've been actually been able to invite them on the show, which means so much to me. And so Sheree, it was a no-brainer. I was like, I have to have Sheree on my podcast. I have the deepest reverence for Black food, Black legacy media, companies. And so I look up to publications such as yours and others. And I'm a print era girl too. So like when we're talking about publications like in 2009, even beyond that, let's talk about
Yes.
like 2006 and 7.
Yes.
I am that girl. And so I obviously we're going to talk about cuisine noir and food, but this has been such a journey. So we're going to jump right into it, Cherie. So Cuisine Noir has a beautiful origin that starts before you. So
Mm.
Chef Richard Pennell planted the seed in
Mhm.
1998 and you grew it into what it is today. And
Yes.
so what did that transition look like and what did you see in that vision and what did stewarding it teach you?
Thank you. And thank you again for having me. I always make sure he's included in the story because without his vision and without bringing me along, I wouldn't be here today. And I think that's important that we acknowledge those who helped us along the way. And sadly, he passed away last year. But I had met Richard in 2005. We were working, when I was doing PR communications, we were working on an event together. And after that, he had reached out and said, you know what, I've got this publication that I want to do. And this is again the print era. And I was in grad school at the time and I'm studying communications and I knew digital was on its way up. And so I was like, oh, okay. And so, mind you, too, a little bit more. I always say I've been penning stories since the fifth grade. I had a fifth grade teacher, Miss Delaney, and we would write short stories. And that was sort of like my intro into writing, not really knowing it. Right. And so then, you go through high school, college, I'm writing in corporate America, I'm doing communications, internal, external. So all of these things are coming, or pieces are just all around me, right? So he said, you know what, I have this publication, Cuisine Noir, it's about food. And at that time, it was really just about Black chefs because he really wanted to center Black chefs. Because Food and Wine wasn't doing it, Bon Appetit, all of the legacies weren't doing it. So I said, and I was just coming on as sort of a PR capacity. I was like, okay, this is very interesting. And so, long story short, we just started working together, started getting introduced to the McDonald's because, most of the Black winemakers at the time were just really centered here in Napa, in this area, and started really getting into that world. Now, my food palate at the time, I grew up outside Chicago, so I have a Midwestern palate, very soulful Black parents. And I share the story real fast that I came out to California in college on an internship, an advertising internship. And it was with, I don't know, it was with Hall Riney, who back in the day, he did pork the other white meat. So he's a big advertising person. So we went to a luncheon. And they set a mixed green salad in front of me. And I was like, what is this? Because I was used to iceberg for the most part. I'm not used to this green, what's this? You know what I mean? And so that was sort of where I was in a sense of beginning of my journey. And then it has since grown. So then, we started working on the publication. I said, you know what, again, I'm in grad school. I said, you know what, this digital thing they're talking about it. And you didn't really have the money for print, to do a print. So let's look at doing this digital thing. So we started, working on that, sort of launched a version of, you should see the first, I wish I still have a screenshot, the first version of Cuisine Noir in 2007. And this was around the time Rock Harper won Hell's Kitchen. Aaron McCargo Jr. won Next Food Network star, and the Neelys were on the scene. And so we were started to come around that term right there. And then what happened was in 2008, we decided to do an ownership change. And 2009, I started to look at rebranding it. Like, you know what? Why don't we look at wine? And, then I later changed it to drink. And let's look at travel because I knew, there were still these perceptions Black people don't travel internationally. We don't ski. We don't do this, all of this stuff. And so that's sort of how it really began. And then I launched the first sort of iteration under me in September 1st, 2009. And it's just been growing and growing ever since.
Wow, a ride. Midwestern girly goes to Cali. You have some greens in front of you that you don't recognize because
Girl,
all we knew was iceberg, okay?
iceberg, iceberg.
Oh my. Sheree, with that, so doing this for over 15 years and through the rise of social media, the algorithm economy, the
Mm.
explosion of food content everywhere, what has it taken to build a legacy media company in this moment, in this particular moment, when the intention, to me, what feels like to me very fragmented,
Mm.
and everyone is a publisher?
So I remember one of the hardest lessons I had to learn was I'm not a tech girl, but I had to learn to embrace. I knew digital was here, but I still wanted to be in my journalist lane. That's what I wanted to do. And I did not embrace like SEO and all of that other stuff as it was really, as people were saying, you know what, we're going to be in this digital era. That was something I didn't do. And I always like to tell this story too, maybe when you guys see the movie since they still play it. So and the other guys with Samuel L. Jackson, The Rock, and Mark Wahlberg, and Will Ferrell. There's the part where after Samuel L. Jackson and The Rock tear up the city, right, going after that Jamaican gang or whatever, and they're on the steps and they're doing that press conference. And so one of the guys, he's like, I think he's like TMZ or he's one of the outlets, digital. And then there's another one like print, like all proud of it, right? And that was 2010. So that's when print was still king, right? Because digital, he was like all ashamed that he was digital. And then and so that said something in that movie. It was like, that was interesting that they do that. And so, I was happy to be in the digital space, but I should have studied it more to see where it was going. And now I'm all up in it, right? But there was that lesson to when we switched from PHP to WordPress. I hadn't really done my SEO. And so I had to spend a couple of years really catching up and really doing that, which I'm glad we did today. And then I have a board member who's a tech person. I'm like, that's who I need. And he makes sure that we're on board with everything. So it really is about, um, you know, staying true to the mission. Because another thing when I first started is that Everyone was like, "You sure you just want to do Black chefs? You sure you just want to center this?" Because this was still around the time when Black chefs were still trying to cook someone else's food because they're still chasing accolades after doing someone else's food versus their own, right? And I really say that Eric Ajapong, when he was on Top Chef, really started to make that shift when he was like, you know what, this is Ghanaian food. This is food. This is, you know what I mean? And so I really see that's when things, when the Black chefs started to like say, you know what, we're doing us now. And so it was staying true to my mission that yes, I want to do Black people of African descent in the diaspora. So that was one. But then looking at how do we do this and stay true to the game? Now, I have to say, being doing that doesn't make me the loudest. It doesn't make me bring me all these numbers and things because when you look at from an SEO standpoint, everybody every day is not searching Black chefs. They're not searching Caribbean chefs. They're not searching African cuisine. So if you're looking at us not having those keywords and all of that that people are searching for every day, but we focus on quality. And that's what I tell my team. We focus on quality. And we are, and probably we'll go into one of the questions you're going to ask later around amplifying versus preserving. But, you know, that's what we're here to do because we're here to tell the stories that no one was telling and no one, and to make sure that these are staying here and they have a place to be here well after I'm gone. And that's the case. And so, you know, I don't operate from a capitalistic standpoint. I don't. I could be rich maybe if I did or have more money, you know what I mean? But I don't. So I would say you have to look at the trade-off. What are you really going for? And look at what are the pros and the cons, and what is it going to cost you to move forward? So in that innovation, you want to stay true to your mission, but still try to make sure that you're capturing what you need to capture to stay current in the moment, if that makes sense.
That makes total sense. Oh my gosh, and just so many nuggets in the. I mean, you alluded to this even when we were at the conference of like staying true to yourself, staying true to the mission, and what
Mhm.
is it that you're seeking? So when I look at publications like Cuisine Noir, and I even think about my own platform, I remember like years ago when I started doing the podcast, someone said to me, he was like, Melissa, 50, 60, 70 years from now, like people are going to be listening, being
Mhm.
able to go back to these records and listen to this. And
Mhm.
that stuck with me.
Yeah,
And I think in that moment, it was really, I wasn't like super it was something that clicked in my mind about preservation and
right,
like what I'm doing is building this catalog because I'm thinking about the future generation. Just
right.
how like I even think about my own family records, right? And like the wishing that I had more audio, I had more video, I had, more photos. And so that is what I'm thinking about as I build. And so there are trade-offs, right? And that's like there are food influencers doing like beautiful work, but I think about what we're capturing just for the moment versus what we're capturing for the future.
Absolutely.
And
Yep.
that's a very big distinction. And especially in this political climate that we're in,
Mhm.
for me, it's super, super, super important to think about what we're capturing for the future versus just in the moment.
And
Just
and that wasn't a part of the vision in the beginning. It was telling the stories. As I started telling the stories, I started uncovering why people didn't see Black chefs. It was like, okay, now we got to really go deeper to why this work matters. Um, and
absolutely.
so, yeah, and like you said, people are going to be coming back to your podcast years later, many years later, to see these stories that are now, hopefully, we are all making them more accessible than
Mhm.
what they were in the past.
Absolutely. So how are you thinking about or how does Cuisine Noir think about like archiving? Is
Mhm.
it, what and I'm sure like whatever thing everything that you're doing real time is an archive, but is there like another like layer to this as you all think about the preservation aspect of collection of voices on your
Sure.
platform?
Sure. So in 2020, when everything was going on, the pandemic, George Floyd's murder, the guy getting harassed in Central Park over bird watching, I was like, And at this time too, I was hitting my head up against the wall with advertisers. And like, why can't I figure this out? I'm an advertising major. I know the space, but I can't get advertisers to advertise on Cuisine Noir, but yet they want our Black dollars, right? So did some research, and long story short, in August of 2020, I founded our nonprofit, the Global Food and Drink Initiative. And that this organization, I found it to be able to carry that work further. So while we have Cuisine Noir, telling stories, we say that under our mission pillar umbrellas around storytelling. So we have that through Cuisine Noir. We also have our podcast, Diaspora Food Stories. We do have education, and that's where preservation comes along. So I will say we are in the midst of a project that is going to be years in the making that will be the preservation piece of our stories. And that's where this will be kept. All of the stories, even more history. There will be a space for your podcast. It will be a central place where people can come to have these archives, this information. So that's what we're working on outside of Cuisine Noir. So Cuisine Noir will be here, but I would say on the other end of what we're doing through Cuisine Noir now, we do the amplifying it. Let's say this. I'm tongue tied this morning. It's on Cuisine Noir, but we're also on Yahoo News. We're on Newsbreak. We're on Smart News. We're on Apple News. We're on Google. We are in the database at EBSCO, which is the big database that libraries use around the world. So if you go into the library and you say, you know what, do you have anything on Black chefs? Then we come up and our articles come up. So in that sense, especially through EBSCO, we're archived that way, and all of our stories are there. So that's that library master file all over the world that will not go away. So that, if you want to call that archive, that's where Cuisine Noir is, right there as well. So we're amplifying and preserving there. But the bigger project will definitely, which we're excited about. But again, it's years in the making, but we are in the research and development of it right now. And so I'm excited about that because it was like also, I love doing a publication, but I said, you know what? There's something deeper than this, for sure. And then the other thing too is, you know, truly connecting and bringing the diaspora together because we are still fragmented, but not intentionally. It's just there's just a lot of history here. You know what I mean? And colonialism and imperialism and all of that has just played a role into fragmenting us. And now we have our communities trying to come together. And so, I'll give an example. I was blessed to be in Reunion a couple of weeks back, which is over in the Indian Ocean by, think of Madagascar and Mauritius, right? And they were doing their first Creole festival. And it was like, you know what? We've got to have a place to talk about Creole culture worldwide because here in the States, we talk about French, African, Spanish, some indigenous too, right? Over there, it's African, Indian, Chinese. So even sort of not the definition, but the Creole culture is different there versus the Caribbean versus the US. And so, how do we bring everyone together for a conversation? And then, how do we properly document it so that people know, right? Because it's not about, having one face for Creole. It's about understanding and again giving those voices. So I'm excited, So I'm like, okay, you know what? Ding, 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 ding. We're on to something because we do need a space where we can talk collectively about Creole, about this, about that. So that's what
Oh,
we're up to.
I'm excited about that. And I know that's going to be a lengthy project indeed, but so
Mhm.
worthwhile and so important, so critical. Can going back to the archival space of the library, which is like duh, but not something that I immediately think about. What was that process like? Can like anybody do that or what are the steps to take to be a part of that archival you name the software and I'm drawing a blank
Oh,
already.
It's called Master File through EBSCO, EBSCO.
Okay. Okay.
They had reached out to me. And I was like, oh, okay. I had never heard of the service before. And we first started with our print issues that we were doing. And so we've got those in there. And then we just started, we're doing our digital issues now. So every month will be considered an issue, and then we'll send those off to them, and then they will get them, you do what they do, and then boom, they're going to be available to the public. And then we just also, they're doing a feature now where we just signed up. I just had a call with her last week around AI. And again, we
Mm,
block training bots, but we want to make sure that our traffic bots and our, searching bots find us. And so they're doing a tool now to, get incorporated into that. So yeah, it was just a matter of, just, them reaching out and going from there. The other thing, which is not a good time, it would be in later years, is around the Library of Congress. That's
mm,
another place of getting in to archive the work that's being done. Again, not the best time to seek on, to do that, but eventually that will be a place that we would love to be as well. So,
absolutely. That's
mhm.
incredible. Oh my gosh. I love that. That's
Thank
awesome.
you.
Yes. 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 Preservation in the making.
Yes.
And I want to have more conversations around this. So I'm glad that we have opened up the space to kind of deep dive into this. So that's so
Mhm.
incredible, Sheree. So Sheree, when I think, a lot of nostalgia like popped up during this conversation when we talked about like SEO and WordPress and like print, so like I was that girl like 2 decades ago, sitting in the hair salon, reading Jet magazines. I was a subscriber to Black Enterprise. So I'm telling my age and the era that I come from.
Yes,
Like,
girl, we're
I
there.
am about the Black media publication era, like to the T. Like, don't let me find a Jet magazine. I'm pretty sure my brother actually found a magazine in his cleaning out his junk in my grandmother's house in Mississippi. Which one was it anyway? I'm
Yeah.
like, I love it. So I'm talking ebony, I'm talking hype
Mhm.
hair, not food related, but still Black culture, right? And
Yes.
so these are Black media institutions that shape culture and identity and community for generations. And
Mhm.
so, a few still standing, but and some gone. But when you think about cuisine noir in that lineage, and again, I know like totally like not food related, but
Mhm.
still built and shaped our culture. Where do you see yourself and what does it take to be the one that endures? So and again, you touching just bit on the preservation part, but
Right.
we know that it takes so much to build these and to
Yeah.
sustain them, right?
It definitely does. I'm with you. I was the Ebony the Jet, the Black Enterprise. Just, we saw us in those magazines, and that was, Black culture, just excellence, right? And so and so as I was creating Cuisine Noir, that's who I looked up to. That's who, you know what I mean? How Mr. Johnson, how he was the door to door, how he had that vision for it and he didn't stray away from it and he kept it going, right? It was the Susan Taylor of really centering Black women and what we need and our voice, and having her to do that. And so, thanks to having those, virtual mentors, right? Without them even knowing it, that's how I looked at how I wanted to move forward as a publisher and doing that, and it's staying true to the culture. It's, I think the other thing too is, you know, I will say this, because we're not the biggest, um, there are some give and takes on things, right? And I'm always honest about this. We are truly, my writers are truly passionate about the stories that we tell. We, full disclosure, I can't pay what some of the other publications pay, you know what I mean? But at the same time, I pay. I make sure they're paid, even if it comes out of my pocket, you know what I mean? So you're not gonna hear no stories about, Cuisine Noir people not getting paid. You ain't gonna hear that. You know what I mean? I will be like, Mama, I need some money to pay people. You know what I mean? So integrity has always been important to me, like that way. And so I think that drives, if I'm looking at how the legacy that we do want to leave behind, and it is we stayed true. We told authentic stories to make sure, you know what, and I always tell my writers, I want to hear their story coming through, not making sure it's always you. I'm like, I hear you too much in here. You know what I mean? I want to hear them to balance it out. And then just continue to, we're seeing that we are getting in front of a younger demographic as, younger demographics are becoming more aware of, why it's important to know who you are through food, and that has more than, and not to be ashamed of it, right? Because that was, one of the things that we know that's going on around, just first generation children that are here in the United States. Just love seeing how they're going back to their food culture that, may have left because, they're an American now and they want to be with their American friends and all of that stuff. And so hopefully we'll be one to and just encourage, be proud in your blackness, be proud of who you are, be proud of the language that you speak. I don't care if you got a thick accent or whatever, we'll work it out. You know what I mean? Because language is culture too. Language is food, language is culture. And so that's, as we, put ourselves up there to be known as that, I hope people recognize that we were able to bring the diaspora together in that sense through food. And you see that now, right? There's so many, like you said, so many food content providers and all of this that you're seeing now with people. This is my Jamaican cuisine, my Guyanese cuisine, my this cuisine, and so it's a beautiful thing to see because I didn't see that in the very beginning when we first started off, and so to see this is just an amazing thing. So hopefully our legacy says that we're a part of that and doing that. So.
Indeed, indeed. So as we record right now, y'all, Sheree, God bless her heart, is PS is Pacific time right now. So she's up early, but she says she's used to being up early, obviously, because she does a lot of interviews. So just thank you again. But what is that process like, in terms of like finding stories and finding these pieces to publish? Like, what is that process?
So I say it's two-pronged in the sense that people reach out to me. So we are listed in like yeah, putting my PR hat on. So we are listed in like decision databases and Mudrack and all of that to make sure that publicists can find us, those who want to pitch can find us. So there's that. And then a lot of my writers are like, you know what, I like this story. I want to do that. So there's that going on, and then there's something that I'll see is like, okay, you know what? That we want to do that story. So it's a little bit of everything that comes along in terms of what's going down and how we get our stories. Social media in that sense has been great because it has been a way to connect with people to see what's going on and who's doing what. So I love social media for that standpoint. So being nosy, researching what's going on, and saying, you know what, this is something that I want to do. So yeah, so that's usually how it comes about.
A mixture of all the great things. And like,
Mhm.
listen, there's a subset of folks who I've interviewed who I have learned about on social media through someone else. And so it's definitely a good pot for like folks are doing their big thing and amplifying. I'll tell you that much.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Cherie, what do you want the next generation of Black food media makers to understand about what it actually takes? Not just the glamorous, more, romanticized version, but the real version of building something like this.
I think we were talking a little bit about this at Black Women in Food. It does, you really have to understand the industry and what's going on. And that was one of the reasons, again, why I founded the nonprofit, because I needed various ways in order to continue to move this work forward. Because the light bulb really went off in 2020 of, these companies are not invested in Black media. They're not. The decision makers that are making these decisions don't look like us. Therefore, they're not seeking publications outside of what they probably know. Okay, someone told you about Essence, someone told you about Black Enterprise, someone told you about Ebony and Jet, and that's all you knew, right? But you're not looking at maybe digging a little deeper. That just wasn't there. And when I had one advocate in whether an agency or whatever client, whatever, when they were removed, then that was my my ally was gone from that. You know what I mean? And so you have to be creative in how you want to move forward from a financial standpoint because advertising dollars are just, I'm not going to say they're not going to be there because everyone is different. It's just, I know from my experience, when you have brands that, and I won't mention any on this podcast, but you have brands that are working with Black creators or Black celebrities and stuff, and it's food that we eat every day. But then you can't, you're fine with taking our dollars, but then we can't you can't even invest, not even, at one time when we first came out in print, an ad was $3,500. It's like, okay, but you're paying Rachel Ray $101,000 for a full page. I can't even get 3,500. And it's such a pull. So, going forward, being very creative. Some people are using Substack and monetizing that way. You got to diversify. I guess the bottom line is you've got to diversify how you're bringing in um, your dollars in order to keep moving forward. And and I, like I said, if Roland Martin, if he delivers a good conversation, that he's a veteran, we know his resume, and he's still having trouble getting dollars, then what does that mean for someone like us? You know what I mean? And so yeah, so just know that the glamour could be going to the red carpet, doing this and doing that. But when it comes to running the business, to make sure that one, if you're paying yourself a living wage, you got some benefits such as health care, a retirement of some type or whatever, you just have to be creative. You just have to be creative.
Yep. And I, as someone who does not have a finance background whatsoever, I am a numbers girl.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to see, I think about the behind the scene logistics of
Yeah.
I see the numbers on the front end. What do the
Mm-hmm.
numbers look like on the back end? To your point, are you paying yourself? What do the
Mm-hmm.
benefits look like? And it varies. Like some people might have a spouse, like you're good,
Right.
but still it's like I think about that entire breakdown. And then
Mhm.
what are you netting from the growth? It's all of that. So,
It definitely
oh
is.
my goodness. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. I mean, I as someone who's witnessed like an uptick of like sponsorship like
Mhm.
during, the time like during the unrest, right? The periods of
Right.
unrest. And so it dropped significantly because it was pretty much sending the message of like, okay, we did our part in supporting, and so we're gonna move on. And it is, and that is in that moment, right? Just going back to what you said, during the show of just going back to staying true to who yourself and just remembering what you're going, like what you're
Right.
heading towards and what you want,
Yeah.
because it's so easy to get strayed or get distracted rather
Mhm.
of like, all right, like, well, maybe I should be chasing this or chasing that. No, you just like
Right.
stay the course. You stay the course. And I get like everybody got to make a dollar. Everybody got to make a dime. Like I totally get it. But yes, and that diversify revenue set is like
Mhm.
so key. So
Right.
your mixes, so you have the nonprofit,
Yes.
right? And so so you would say it's a mix of advertising dollars, like grants,
Exactly.
sponsorships,
Donations. Yep.
and okay. Okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
Oh man, the labor of love.
No, I know. It definitely is. And then, one thing I'll say too, and it is what it is, there's been a lot of conversation around journalists versus content creators, right? Because, a lot of the dollars have dried up to where they are going toward social media content providers, creators, right? And it is what it is. You know what I mean? And
Yep,
it's, as a publisher, there's no need to be, put down anyone, or
not at all.
the game has just changed. And so you have to, again, keep that in mind
Mhm.
of, being able to pivot and
Yeah.
look at certain things differently. And you have to be on the numbers. I remember I worked for Macy's corporate, and I did the marketing for the Macy's credit card, and my boss. And I remember, we would always have a lot of fun because we were opening new stores and different things. And I'd be like, oh my God, we're good to go to Disney World and all of this stuff. But different things he would say, though, is he would always have come back to the numbers. And he was like, okay, kid, take the stars out of your eyes. He would tell me, take the stars out of your eyes because we need to look at these numbers. Because, his boss was the CFO. And then
Mhm.
above that was the CEO, so so that I love Brian for that. He was one of my best. I mean, he was when you look at my corporate bosses, he was like one of my top two.
Mhm.
And he would always say, take the stars out of your eyes, and we have to look at the numbers. And it
Yeah.
holds true for this too.
I'm gonna always be an old school girl, Sheree. I'm always going back to what I know growing up. I'm always gonna have one foot in what I knew coming up and the other foot in this digital world because the talent that I see, oh my gosh, is incredible.
It is, it is. And that's the other thing I would say too. Um, I've just chosen to stay in my lane. I am so I remember a couple of things where this came true. So going back to 2020, when everybody all of a sudden started to amplify Black stories and this and that and this, and I felt, like I was the tortoise, right? And here comes the hare, right? And I
Mm,
was like, you know what? I've been telling these stories. I don't have to change a darn thing of what I'm
absolutely.
doing. You know what I mean? And then when it comes to social media, I can't be something that I'm not. I'm
Mm-mm.
not you hardly see me on social media. A lot of the times we may be quiet, but I have to do a lot of work behind the scenes, and
Yep.
we're not at that point where we have someone doing our social media. I have people helping me out, but it's not like we have this team that is, you focus on social media. I still have to give direction, right? I still have to
Mhm.
this and that. And so I've just learned to say, you know what, be comfortable where I'm at because we're building something over here and doing this, and we're just not able to be great at doing both right now.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I have to be okay with that. And so I'm gonna let the social media creators do what they do because they're amazing at
Yep.
it. But that's not a lane that I'm trying to get into. I'm not trying to straddle the fence myself on having us known for that. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay
Yeah,
with it.
absolutely. Absolutely. And it goes back to, I go back to, I really enjoyed Tony Tipton at the
Okay.
Black Women in Food Conference and her chat with Alex. And it was, what I mean, the whole essence of her conversation. I'm a journalist. It is
Mm-hmm.
the who, what, when, where,
Mm-hmm.
and why. Like that is what I have always known.
Right.
And as someone who studied communications, and I thought I did want to go into journalism at one point in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if my brain is set up to go back to an academic institution, but like I um I just really enjoyed that conversation because it was this is what I've always known, but her still having respect
Right.
for, the influencers and the food influencers, the media influencers out there. And so I just want to lift that up because like journalism work is still like if more than ever, like we need this work, like
Mhm.
for sure, for sure. Sheree, we're gonna close out. It's been a pleasure. I can talk to you all
I
day.
know, I know. Yeah, so
And I
much.
know you got other interviews to do after we conclude. So Cuisine Noir was first
Mhm.
in meeting, like you all being the one to like really, amplify the voices of like Black food chefs and cuisine. And what does it mean to you to have built something that others now follow?
It does mean a lot because I didn't start out with that in mind. I didn't know where this journey would take me to. I just thought, hey, I've been writing stories since I was in the fifth grade, and I like writing stories, and food seems interesting. And so this sort of rabbit hole that I've been able to enjoy going down and crawling through and coming over. has been a blessing. And so, to see others really embrace food, to really know the work that we're doing, it means a lot. It truly does mean a lot. And I think I may have shared this. I remember one chef who had started working with me in the very beginning. Um, and he called me out of the blue one day and he said, "You know what? I just want to give you your flowers because when you started, I didn't see the vision." And I
Mm.
was like, "You know what? Thank you for that." Because and so it really makes me feel good. It makes me feel the work I'm doing is resonating with people and it's being impactful and it is changing lives. To be able to help people start their careers, see some of my writers go on and write for amazing
Yes.
publications and do amazing things. Margot and Ashia in Portugal, and they're just doing great. Nicholas is studying food and communications in Paris right now. And so just to be able to do a lot of things and have my hand on things that people see, people do not see. There's a lot of things that I don't tell that you guys have seen in the world that you probably don't know that my pulse has been on it. It's just been
Mm.
a blessing to be able to do that. So makes me proud.
I
um,
love
and
that.
hopefully I can continue to help out anyone else who wants to come behind. So, and as a matter of fact, I am talking to someone later on this morning who wants to, look at how can she, move forward in the food space as well. So I'm always happy to share. So I'm honored because I'm one, I know my work, I know my worth, I know what I've done. And so, there's nothing, like they said, there's what is for you is for you.
Amen.
And, I'm always happy to share what I know. So
Amen. I love that so much. And Cuisine Noir has been an inspiration to me. I mean, between you and Tony Tipton and like others, I'm telling you, it has really made me want to revisit like the art of journalism. I will say that for sure. It really has. And so, who knows? Maybe I'll be diving back down that lane, my
hey,
brain.
hey.
So I just want to thank you. Thank you again for sharing your story, your voice on my platform. I am honored to have such a voice, just be present here with me today. And so, Sheree, if for folks who are just learning about Cuisine Noir, like, and they want to tap in and learn about the travel and food and culture and even climate that you
Yes.
cover on Cuisine Noir, like, tell the folks where they can find.
Absolutely. So they can go to Cuisine Noir, CuisineNoir.com. You can find all of our stories there. You can also listen to our stories on Diaspora Food Stories. We have some great stories over there. One of the things we do sue some of the stories. We have a episode in Portuguese and English, episode in Spanish and English, and French and English. So we make sure we're capturing the language part there. And then on social media, we're at Cuisine. Just look up Cuisine Noir. You'll see us on Instagram. We're on Instagram and Facebook. And we narrowed that down. And then for the Global Food and Drink Initiative, you can definitely find us on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn.
Wonderful. Sheree, thank you again. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Melissa. I'm honored. Thank you again for allowing me to share my story.
Absolutely. Thanks for tuning in, y'all. Peace. Thank you for listening to Edible Activists. You can find today's episode on Spotify, iTunes, and Simplecast, and follow along on all social media platforms at Edible Activists for updates. Want to support this platform? You can do so by purchasing our commerce or connecting with me about media partnerships at www.edibleactivist.com. In the words of Baba Tariq Adunu, there is no culture without agriculture. Peace.